I appreciate your return to my channel, my lovely humans. I'm FCA, and if you're new here, hi. I do some trial coverage, and I have been following and doing updates of the Karen Read trial for multiple years now, because it's been happening since 2022 when the incident happened, and I was following before trials and stuff were being streamed and happening, and then I caught on to it and became very interested. I watched the whole first trial, and just for transparency, I am not a lawyer, paralegal, or anything like that. And also, my perspective is that Karen Read is not guilty and that there are a lot of culprits doing a lot of crazy things at once. But you know what I love about the First Amendment? You want to know what I love about the internet is that you can find so many different opinions, and what we need to work on is politely sharing differing opinions without it being a personal attack. Someone else thinking that Karen Read is guilty doesn't make me or my viewpoint lesser, right? It doesn't take away from me to have somebody else have a different perspective from me. We can take all of that information in and make conclusions without becoming angry and enraged. And so that's what I was thinking about today while I was at work. And I have another video planned where I'm in similar get up, pardon me, talking a lot. I just got off of work a little bit ago. But I was thinking what I'm going to do for this video is I'm going to play devil's advocate for the Karen Read stance. I think she's not guilty, but what I want to do is from the eyes of a juror. That's how I take these things in. Since I'm not a paralegal or lawyer or anything, I think of myself as an outside juror. I'm looking at the evidence, watching what the lawyers are presenting, what the witnesses say, what the experts say, and the videos and photos, etc. And then I'm drawing those conclusions. And you know what? Two people can see the same thing and see different things. So what I want to do is get out of the echo chamber of my own head and play devil's advocate for Karen Read by seeing it through the lens of somebody who sees her as guilty. So that is what I'm going to be trying to do. I made a whole thing while I was at work on my breaks and stuff, and that's what I am going with. Keeping in mind that I might be a little bit because I did just get off work a short time ago, as I said, for the third time. So let's get into this, playing devil's advocate for my Karen Read stance. So let's look at Karen Read as the person that we have seen so far. She has said some interesting things in her docu-series and in other media coverage that she has done. Not advisable, by the way. Like, everything you say can and will be used against you in court, and prosecutor Brennan has been trying to grab all of it. And listen, Karen Read is a human. Humans make mistakes. Humans make bigger mistakes more often when there's drinking involved. And she has some medical issues that maybe she shouldn't drink in association with, but people's own bodies, their own business. And she has a temper. There were a lot of voicemails where she's gone into fits of rage. Witnesses said that she's gone off, just flies off the handle at the littlest things, because she constantly was thinking that her then boyfriend, Officer John O'Keefe, was having an affair with somebody all the time. She had a giant fit on a vacation to Aruba and about him having friends who were females, and those female friends didn't care for her. She's an intense personality, and she has her own obnoxiousness about her. So she was drinking. She has fits of temper even when she's sober, and she's very, very jealous. So she could have very well been getting into fights with him at the bar. They were, John O'Keefe, Karen Read, the Alberts, the McCabe's, and their other family and friends, including when Karen Read and John O'Keefe were on breaks. They had a very on and off relationship because of her enragements and jealousy fits. And she sometimes would find comfort in a fellow part of the Canton Police Department member, or at least affiliate of Brian Higgins. And aside from the cringiest flirt messages between them, they also shared a kiss, Karen Reed and Brian Higgins. But on the night of the incident, January 29th, 2022, Karen Reed and John O'Keefe were apparently on, and Brian Higgins was at the bar, and they were all drinking too much, and they were all drinking and driving. Not great. And she admitted that she had had alcohol in the docuseries. And in the interview with Gretchen Voss, she said that she had some alcohol. So intoxication was present. And again, when you already have a short temper and then you add alcohol to the mix, so it's not that far-fetched that with that little love triangle, if you want to call it that her and John O'Keefe, and she was thinking that the Alberts, before we touch on that, the Alberts live on a street called Fairview, and there have been numerous accounts that Karen Reed thought that John O'Keefe was having an ongoing affair with another person who lived on Fairview. So when the after party was going to take place at the Alberts' house, she didn't want to go. She said that it was partly because of her medical stuff started acting up, and she wanted John to go home with her. He wanted to keep partying. She started getting jealous. Again, that alcohol not helping with any brain things. He's like, I'm going to the Alberts. I'm not going to anybody else's house. You can go to somebody else's house when I'm not there. You can start there and walk somewhere else. She gets mad. She throws a glass at her taillight. She also had previously been on a Ring footage camera and was shown hitting her taillight. Just because something cracks in a moment doesn't mean all the pieces automatically fall off of a taillight right then and there. So she could have lost the pieces later on. And taillight is not gentle like plastic. It is thick, special automotive acrylic. It's sharp. Okay? Even if the pieces aren't falling off, the jagged edges and things sticking out can cut you. They do hurt. They are capable of cutting flesh. So she already had a broken taillight, or at least a cracked taillight. She makes it worse by throwing glass at it. And then because she's having an argument that John wants to go party with the Alberts and all the rest of their friends, and she's done and wants him to come home because she doesn't trust other people on Fairview. So they argue all the way to the Alberts. She's still trying to get him to come back. He gets out of the car. Now, he had also been drinking. If you're wondering, okay, how did he get injured in the way where she backs into him and hits him? Well, there are a lot of things that could happen. Perhaps, he's getting all heated up because they're in an argument. We don't know how much he had to drink. We don't know what his blood alcohol content was. It hasn't been brought up. At least not in any open forum thing. But he had been drinking too. So maybe he bent over at the curb, like he was holding on to the trunk or back end of the car and was throwing up because he'd been drinking. And then that's when Karen Reed, she sees him. She's intoxicated. She's enraged. She's having a jealous fit. She backs into him and hits him. He scrapes his arm on the car, and then he stumbles around. And it is January in Massachusetts. It had been snowing, and there was a snowstorm coming in. The ground is frozen. Dirt, when it is frozen, is very, very hard. It's not soft, gushy mud. So she could have just, we're not saying that she revved up and rammed back into him. It could have just been kind of like an elbowing him with the car sort of thing. Enough to make him lose balance. Again, he's intoxicated. If he was over there throwing up, he's going to be a little dizzy. That drunkenness is getting to him. And he could have been blacking out just from being drunk in and of itself. Because if he's intoxicated enough to throw up, or just lean over, he doesn't have to be throwing up. Maybe he was just leaned over, just This woman's making me mad. And then back into him. He loses his balance, scrapes his arm on the car, falls over, hits his head hard enough on the hard ground. There could have been a rock there. You know, they weren't looking for rocks or abnormal, like, uneven things in the dirt at the time. That's not coming up anywhere. So he could have hit his head. Maybe there was like sometimes when snow gets packed and it melts over, it gets hard. So there could have been something like that hit him in the head. He's unconscious, or he just blacked out on his own and Karen Reed didn't notice. And then she drives off and leaves him. She's not paying attention. Again, that's why it's negligent homicide, not first degree. She made a mistake while intoxicated and then left him driving off. Okay? And he really doesn't make it into the house because there is something to be said where how many people have to be lying before you believe the truth, right? So all of the people, all of the Alberts and the McCabe's, Brian Higgins, etc., all of them are lying. Every single one of them is lying. Remember, this is a group of people who had all been drinking. You don't always see things clearly. You're not paying attention. They were celebrating one of the kids' birthdays. They were all already at the Alberts' house in the basement, from a lot of accounts is where their main hangout was. So nobody's looking out the window after midnight in January. It's dark outside. It was snowing outside, and they're all drunk. You know what? They didn't see a body outside. If somebody doesn't come in the house, they don't know about it. And a lot of people had said that they had went out not the door where the front yard was, but a side door instead from the basement. So if everyone's going out a side door, they're all drunk, it's dark, they don't see him. They're not paying attention. Okay, everyone else is lying, even though they were all drunk and it was dark. All right, sure. Let's do that. So, you know, we have the Alberts have a dog and they happen to move and happen to rehome their dog. Coincidences are a thing. They had already mentioned and had brought evidence to show that them moving house was already a plan. It was already in the works before that incident happened. It just so happened that they concluded moving and escrow and all of that after the incident happened. They're not going to suddenly go, okay, never mind. There was a guy on this front lawn. I guess we can't move anymore. Like, no, they're not doing that. And where they had already planned to move prior to that had too small of a yard for their dog, who is a large German Shepherd. So to be fair to her, they rehomed her to somewhere where she would have lots of yard space and running space, which a big dog needs. Right? And so that was all that stuff was already in the works. Like, does it look not great that the Alberts move and rehome their dog after the incident? It doesn't look great, but it wasn't planned that way. They were already doing those things. The fact that something happened at the end of January isn't their fault. They were already moving. Then we also have mention of one of the witnesses who saw Karen Reed's car outside of the Alberts and who was with Karen Reed when she found John O'Keefe the next morning, and that is Jen McCabe. Now, I know that Jen McCabe was controversial. She was very defensive and very when she was on the stand. But remember, her family was getting harassed. Her daughter's car, like in real life, not just like imagine being bombarded just with all these horrible things, and you're like, we were just out drinking, having a good time. We didn't know he was there. I'm with someone who was so drunk the night before, she didn't remember dropping John O'Keefe off. If you can't remember dropping John O'Keefe off or remember where you had driven to the night before, do you really think you're going to remember if in a sudden brazen act of hostility you might have backed into them? Like, because of her jealous fits and rage already? Like, that, That's not outside of the realms of possibility. And Jen McCabe is being defensive because, again, her family was real world being attacked. Her daughter's car was disgustingly vandalized with semen. And people were saying horribly harassing things to her daughter. Jen McCabe's just being a mama bear. Okay? How calm and collected and non defensive would you be if your kid was getting harassed and they walked outside one day to see words written in semen on their car? Like your daughter. It's gross. Yes, her daughter is an adult daughter, but that doesn't change the fact that that's your kid being harassed and their stuff is getting vandalized. It's gross. It's not nice. People shouldn't go real world with things. Be a bit testy about it. And so here she is on a stand and she thinks, and she's like, listen, we didn't see John come in. We saw her car dropping him off, and now he's in the front lawn. And then all of a sudden, I'm getting a bunch of harassing text messages and social media messages. And then, of course, there was the whole how long to die in cold. We already had an expert who said that Jen McCabe had a bunch of tabs open. And when you leave tabs open, whenever you do searches and you leave all those tabs open, whatever the time was from when you open the tab, any other tabs that come after that are going to say that timestamp, but versus when they actually happened. We already had an expert who explained that and said, yeah, no, this text message was made later. It was just stored at this time because of all of the other tabs being open. And she had already said that her kids, she's not an old woman, but she's a more mature aged woman. So technology is not always her friend. Okay. And, she's freaked out. She's hearing Karen Reed, saying, did I hit him? She knows something about hitting him was a possibility in Karen Reed's mind. All right. Again, everybody's lying except Karen Reed. And Jen McCabe is just being protective of her family. Talk about the police. Yes, the police investigation was a botched job. And former Trooper Proctor, who has since been fired and dismissed from that position, who was the lead investigator, said some terrible things about Karen Reed, and clearly they did not do a good job. Because, red Solo cups in somebody's convenient bag from the mini mart, not it. But however the police did or did not do their jobs, it's a terrible thing for justice. It really is. But that their actions afterwards doesn't really change Karen Reed's actions the night before. It's like, it's hard to serve justice when you have the investigation go as poorly, unprepared, and just sus. The whole thing on their side was just sus. It really was. That doesn't change what Karen Reed did the day before or the night before, right? Trooper Proctor, or former Trooper Proctor, was held accountable for his actions, inactions, and lack of professionalism and upholding justice and the law in the way that he should have. But Karen Reed, while intoxicated, still at the same time, while poopy police work was happening, could have still, while intoxicated, backed into or hit him with her car enough to make him pass out or hit his head hard on the ground and then left him there. Because she dropped him off. He was in their lawn. He got there somehow. She was his ride. So, now, if someone else had given him a ride there, if he had driven himself there and his car was found up the street or something, then maybe we'd have a different story. But she was there. Multiple witnesses saw her car there. She admitted that she was intoxicated. People don't make good decisions when they're intoxicated. She was being jealous and in a little rage fit hit him. And yeah, the prosecution was withholding evidence, but so was the defense. The defense was yelled at for not being honest with the court about paying witnesses. Yeah, though the ARCA people weren't paid till after, but they're still paid expert witnesses. And that you have to divulge that to the jury. It was after the first jury of the hung trial, which I understand, but for this upcoming trial, you still need to divulge that information. So both sides, the prosecution before should have handed stuff over, the defense didn't hand stuff over. And when you need to be honest with the jury of saying, why were they trying to keep that? Like, why are you trying to hide stuff? Now, maybe it was just a simple clerical error, etc. Except that it wasn't. Alan Jackson knew he had paid ARCA. He had the things. He was the one who made the payment. He should have disclosed all of that information. And Judge Canone throwing bias around and not taking a poll of the jury the first time. That's not standard in Massachusetts. She was following the law and the standard for her state. And the rest of us can be mad about that all we want, but that doesn't change that. That's how this state does it. She followed what the state does. She's doing her job. And then, as far as her bias, she wanted to give it's like, if you have an expert, there has to be a counter expert, and then the jury gets to decide. She's not being biased necessarily. She's just like, I had a lot more to say about this expert and less to say about this expert. Both of them are going to show up. They both get to talk about what they're going to talk about. And it's just as simple as, we're letting this expert say this opinion. We're going to let another expert counter that opinion and then let the jury decide. That is what the jury is there for. So then, of course, we got to talk about all the butt dials. What about all the butt dials? You know what? Butt dials happen. Okay? People update their phones. I don't know what to tell you about Brian Higgins losing his mind. Like, maybe he just didn't want to be affiliated with all the stuff. He's like, listen, I know that I shared a kiss with Karen Reed, but we weren't doing anything. Like, you can check our text messages. There's not lots going on there. It was so like low ball. And he's like, you know what? I just absolutely don't want to be affiliated with any of this. So he gets rid of his phone. Did he do it in a very extreme way that's unusual? Yeah. But people get their phone upgrade. iPhones, all those people had iPhones. iPhones have the same upgrade times. So it's like, oh, and you know, they're family members. So when you have a family plan, you can all get upgrades at once. So you're going to. Like, again, coincidences are the thing. Are they suspicious looking coincidences? Yeah, I'll give you that. But people get their phones updated. They got their iPhone updates. It's not like, oh, we decided in the middle of the year for no reason to get an iPhone update. They got their iPhones updated when it was iPhone season. It happens. It happens to a lot of people. Butt dials happen to people. And again, we're talking about a lot of people who are in a little bit of an older generation. So you know what? Them leaving their phones here, there, and on the bed, it happens. As a person who once was in a vehicular incident because neither of my parents, when I was a kid, brought their cell phones, even though it was February in Ohio and there was an ice storm, neither one of them brought their cell phones. And we went out of town, not a long way out of town, but a little way out of town. So you know what? Having a phone in a secure place, you know, nearby or whatever, or in a different area, everybody doesn't take care of where their phone is, okay? It's the point of that story. And it's 100% just as possible as anything else that when they were all getting together, the Alberts, McCabe's, etc., and talking to each other, they really legitimately were like, oh my gosh, did you see him? Did anyone see him? Did anyone see him walking down the road? Was he trying to go to somebody else's house and he fell in our yard? Like, was he dropped off here? They're trying to figure out what happened. Their friend and, you know, one of the police brotherhood went down in another one's yard. People are going to be curious. Like, yeah, they're going to talk about things with each other and try to figure stuff out and comfort each other. That's what friends and family members and, you know, close family members do for each other. They comfort each other. Like, oh my gosh, I wanted to go check. I went to go check something on my phone, and I'm just seeing a barrage of like die Nicole die stuff or whatever. And it's like, I'm sorry. I know that we're all going through it. This stuff happened with this person. This somebody sent this to me. You know, that's a lot for people to take. So, in conclusion, were there a lot of bad things and bad actions by former Trooper Proctor and the rest of the police department? Yeah, there's definitely some retraining and additional learning that needs to happen there. But, and are there some unusual phone activity? You know what? It was snowing. These are older people who just butt dials happen, and all of that stuff doesn't, anyone else's bad actions don't negate Karen Reed's potential bad actions, right? Is it really justice for John O'Keefe if the person who really did something to him gets away just because we're mad at the cops? Like, no, let the cops have their investigations and get their punishment like Trooper Proctor. We don't need to take that justice out like with Karen Reed as a substitute, okay? Because then there's no justice for John O'Keefe's family, like his niece and nephew, who once again have no one after their parents passed away and he adopted them. And the daughter or niece had said that Karen Reed had told her the morning before after that they had had an argument. And then he doesn't come home. She being Karen Reed, left a really nasty voice message about him spending time having an affair. She knows he was having an affair. It was a bad decision made by a drunk woman with a bad temper. It's not mystery science theater. It's legitimately something could have happened. So that is my, I was trying to go through everything, so I'm sorry for the extended video. I wanted to cover all the main points from the other side as best I could. So let me know what you politely, of course, if you agree with Karen Reed being guilty or not guilty, and tell me like some key points of why. Like, I think this was too overwhelming evidence. I think this was just too suspicious to be a coincidence. Or, no, this absolutely could have happened like that. I hope that I did an okay job with, like, I didn't want to take away from reality. Like, I can't say that a bunch of butt dials is, oh, that's perfectly normal. But it's reasonable to say, you know what, sometimes stuff like that happens and it just is. So that was me playing devil's advocate for my stance on Karen Reed. I hope that you enjoy, and we'll get to see more evidence and stuff when this trial comes up. I will see you there for that coverage. Bye, my lovely humans.